Welcome all. Good evening. We are happy to host you all and have you all in the third and last AUC Design Talk for this fall semester. The AUC Design Talk this semester focuses on collaborations in design and the work of design collectives. Our guest speakers will present and discuss their work and the framework of their collaborative practices. The main aim is to discuss these collectives' social role in supporting design communities by offering an inspirational environment where design is more involved with its surroundings. Through those talks, we hope to shed light on different types of collaborations, the pros and cons that have been encountered and dealt with, and most of all, a shared vision about collaborations in design regionally and globally, and its effect on expanding the graphic design field horizon. Allow me to introduce our super trio, like friends, super designers, Studio Mobius, Hala, Alani, Hadeyeh, Badry, and Riem Ibrahim, the co-founders of Studio Mobius, a Dubai-based design studio established in 2010. In their talk today, under the title Ripple Effect, they will tap into their studio practice and highlight several projects that were conceived over the past decade, summarizing the short life. I don't find it short, decade is a much long time, but really a passionate and interesting life of Mobius. They also aim to shed light on the studio's ethos and approach to the design profession as fluid, shifting, and ever-evolving field of practice, with a special focus on more socially oriented collaborative modes of cooperation and collaborations. So welcome, Hala, Hadeyeh, and Riem. And I will hand it over to you. As always, we have 30 minutes to 40 minutes of presentation, and then we will open the discussion for everybody to share their comments or questions. So please share with us, but please leave your mics in mute until then. So I hope everybody enjoy this talk. So please.
Can you guys see our screen? All good? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, hello everyone from Dubai. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to be here with us. We hope you have a snack at hand and that none of you are hungry and therefore cranky. Allow me to introduce the three of us. My name is Hadeyeh Badry, and this is Hala and Riem. We have three names that have the potential to be misspelled, misused, mispronounced. So I am usually referred to as Hadri or Badriya, and Hala over here is the best one. She is Halal or Dhabiha Halal, up to you. And Riem over here insists on spelling her name with an I and therefore is called Riem. Even Mobius is conflated with Morpheus. So in addition to running a studio, we are currently, the three of us, we teach at the College of Art, Architecture and Design in the American University of Sharjah. And I just wanted to leave this here for you, that we are similar in temperament to the three-headed Ghidorah. That middle one staring at you is me, because I'm the youngest and I'm the skinniest. Okay, so I'm gonna start talking about the studio. We started, hard to believe, a decade ago, in 2010 with so much innocence. And straight out of undergrad, we came up with this idea of putting together a studio out of existential blues and much frustration. Like, we asked ourselves, what are we gonna do next? How are we going to pursue design and interrogate our love of form and type with the same freedom a student in academia has? We also asked who's gonna love us. We didn't know. So we told ourselves we need like this grown-up job. So maybe we should just start a studio. And I think looking back now, we really owe it to us being naive. And I think we had the courage because we didn't know how difficult it would be to run a really teeny tiny studio in a fast paced environment like Dubai. So in a way, this studio, this naivete was a blessing. Why a studio and why a small studio? And despite the pressure of expanding or becoming bigger or moving into a big space, we like being small. And we think the way the studio works probably defies what a successful business model is on paper. But we think this Mobius studio really withstands depression, pressure, and the plague because we are friends. And even though mixing friendship and business is a very rare idea and it's probably avoided, um, for us, we think it works because it forces you to make decisions outside of the realm of logic. You make decisions because, as cheesy as this sounds, but because you care for someone. And I think if it wasn't for this, we would have given up a long time ago. The main aim of the studio was to create a community around each other. And we hope that this tightly knitted triplet would create kind of like a ripple effect that grows with us as we're moving. Our dream is to create a more inclusive, honest, and resourceful microbiome around ourselves. And we don't think that this city is made to foster small studios. So over the years, we asked ourselves, like, how many pitches do we have to do until someone sees us, or is our labor being compensated, or how important are we to these institutions that claim to want to support us? And we think that with the rise of COVID, and especially during lockdown, a lot of these intentions surfaced with all these institutions making claims. So as a small studio, we like to ask like an open-ended question and sort of leave it out there. Are we an asset to these powers that control the cultural scene in our city? We're not sure. And this year we turned 10 years old, a decade. We are, obviously much older. We look older. We buy anti-aging eye cream. We go to the dermatologist more often, etc., etc., etc. We really feel it. But also, we've spent a long time getting to know each other. And I know you all are getting this like very polished, edited version on the screen, but it took a long time and it's been quite a journey. Over the past 10 years, we made jokes about taking turns doing masters. And it really started as a joke, but it actually happened. So 6 years in the making, we all took turns. And so it was kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And now, in addition to being dinosaurs, we call ourselves witches. And I think it's been, working well for us. So before we talk to you about the three main facets of our practice, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the nature of process. And the work we see right now being circulated. So when we look around, the work being circulated looks maybe clinical, predictable, a little bit boring. But that's not to say that we don't fall in this danger zone too. I think it's when process becomes dictated by time constraints, budget constraints, or solutions that are really quick. The work starts to look a certain way, and we know that we fall in this like loophole when we find ourselves to be unhappy. We think design process has to be a form of inquiry, a search, a question that you ask and you work towards, always interrogating like a missing or unknown variable.
So in Mobius, we have mainly three modes of operation. The first is commercial. This is mainly encompassing of commission projects that we do to sustain ourselves and sustain our business. The studio initiated projects are mainly our passion projects. These are the endeavors that we mainly pursue out of pure love and curiosity, especially in the beginning of our Mobius life. These were often compensated financially, but we would do them anyways. And then the third one is our independent work, and this is basically our very subjective and personal interests that we pursue in this specific modes. So, you know, we hate to admit it, but the first priority for a studio is always the commercial. And you know, it's exhausting, and you know, it's quite a learning curve to work with a client. You don't always get to do what you want as a designer. We had to learn how to compromise. But at the same time, it's a huge learning opportunity for us, even after we've been doing this for 10 years. Through commission projects, we had our very first kind of lesson about community and the advantage of having a supportive network of people around you. The way that we got our first commission was purely out of word of mouth, a friend who knew a friend. Who knew that we started the studio. You know, we were back then, no one knew us. They didn't know what we were doing, what services we wanted to provide, and basically approached us with a ridiculously enormous project for us at the time, which was working with the UAE National Pavilion in Venice, Ben Ali. And you know, like we were super excited to be asked to pitch for this project. And, you know, we at the time, we thought that we won the pitch because we're awesome and that we provided, you know, like unprecedented quality of work. But the reality of the project was that we were the cheapest, and we were willing to work ungodly hours and deliver things with a ridiculous deadline. And this is how we landed this project. But it was a blessing in disguise because it opened up really big opportunities for us afterwards. And right now, our client list includes mainly cultural institutions, educational institutions such as the American University of Sharjah, NYU Abu Dhabi. And we also work with art centers, art galleries, such as Tashkil, which is an art center, workspace, and gallery, exhibition gallery. And we also worked with extensively with the Tourism Cultural Authority in Abu Dhabi. And a big portion of our clients are also startups that are looking for a branding or a rebranding for their work. And you know, again, through this component of our work in particular, we learned our strengths and weaknesses as designers. We also learned how to work together as three individuals. And we learned how to find this organic, dynamic process that has us kind of be as efficient and as productive and as kind of professional as possible. One of the interesting projects that we were commissioned a few years back was by SHF, which is a non-for-profit organization in Abu Dhabi. And they asked us to create a visual research on the city of Abu Dhabi with a special focus on Mina Zayed, which is the port area of Abu Dhabi. And they had big future plans for this part of the city. They were looking to change it into a creative district that is a concentrated hub for arts, design, makers, etc. And you know, the premise of the project really kind of interested us because we knew that in a couple of years, the face of Mina Zayed, because of this development, is gonna change a lot. And we felt the need to preserve and document how it looks like now before this development happens. And what was really, you know, like it has a subtle irony about it is that the entire objective of this project was to approach or outsource investors or maybe designers to come and work for or around this project. So let's say they wanted to invite Pentagram to work on a design aspect of the project, they would approach them with this dossier of visual library to inform them and educate them about the city of Abu Dhabi and about the Mina Zayed, to have them kind of want to collaborate on this creative district project. So we ended up creating an extensive photo library of Mina Zayed and Abu Dhabi that we later on observed and categorized into different categories that ended up being things like patterns, motifs, symbols, textures, facades, and also vernacular and architectural urban icons. We realized that our research also had some loopholes, just maybe because of limitations of accessibility, for instance. So we digged into already existing archival photo materials to fill in those loopholes. We started extracting some of the visual elements and creating patterns that are also, that have a layer of like a dynamic element that maybe takes lighting into consideration, etc. And we provided them with these pattern swatches. And eventually we also took a stab into drafting a brand or a brand direction for this creative district. This project is still ongoing. We don't have officially a creative district yet, but we know that they have started sharing this dossier that we've created with other people.
The second model that we operate in is or studio-initiated projects, and we mainly want to focus on two long-term projects that we've been working on ever since we started. The first one is a design house initiative. We started Design House in 2013, and it was mainly for selfish reasons. We wanted to exhibit work, and there was no venue that would host designers like us. Back in the days, we had only one design fair called Dubai Design Days, and Dubai Design Days mainly focused on showcasing design as a luxury through furniture and product design, and it doesn't fit us. We are at the other end of the spectrum, and that doesn't mean we don't appreciate the fair. On the contrary, we think it was revolutionary in a sense that it really established Dubai as a design hub. But we wanted something that caters for designers like us. Design House was meant to be a platform and a catalyst for people to understand design beyond the commercial realm. And so we knocked some doors, and we eventually convinced Dubai Culture Authority to give us a house in Al Bastakia area in Dubai, which is an old neighborhood in Dubai. And take over an old house, and with some form of funding, we were able to host exhibitions, workshops, and talks, and sometimes even feasts. We mainly every year we managed to operate in that district in 3 consecutive years, and we mainly worked with a designated theme every year, and we selected designers who 8 designers who would respond to the theme with research-driven projects, and we fund their design inquiries under one condition: they have to give workshops, talks, free of charge and open for public, to allow the public to understand their processes and the topics that they are tackling. And it was a very diverse group of designers over the years. We didn't only focus on graphic designers. And then in 2016, we made a huge leap. We were approached by a reputable design gallery in Sharjah called 1971 Design Space to take over their space for an entire year. And conceive an edition of Design House. And so we were interested in this idea of talking about design as a social agent, and specifically target issues within the premise of Sharjah. And so each one of the selected designers were investigating either an area within Sharjah or a community or a person that they think they could improve some aspect of their life through a design intervention or project. And because we had the luxury of taking over the space for a year, we exhibited the designers' initial proposals and process to the public so that they get feedback early on and perhaps some support or extra funding from other entities that are interested in the project. We also got funding to do a publication this time around, and the publication was meant to live beyond the exhibition timeline or time frame and really talk about design from different perspectives. So we worked with writers who come from anthropology discipline, journalists, translators, and financial analysts, I believe.
Just to hear about their take.
Just to hear about their take on design. One of the projects that were featured in the exhibition or was part of the exhibition is a collaboration with Wajiha initiative from Amman, which is founded by Ali Al-Masri and Hussein Al-Azad. And we brought in Wajiha to bring in their expertise in rebranding shop fronts. And we were interested in tackling or targeting shops that are in the heart of Sharjah and are homogeneous in terms of aesthetics and could really benefit from the rebrand boost. And we also collaborated with locally based designers to conceive these designs. So for example, this shop in front of you is for a barber shop. It's called Salon Al-Abyad. And the redesign is by a designer named Zaina Adhami. And Zaina was really interested in celebrating the main barber's culture. The main barber is the guy in the bottom right. And this is the final rebrand. And funny enough, when we first approached the shops with the idea, a lot of them were resisting the idea of accepting change. But once they saw this shop with the rebrand, everybody was excited to get the same treatment. And later on, our upcoming, our next design audition was in collaboration with the Cairo-based designer Inji Ali, Pro Helvetia, Tashkil from Dubai, and Veltromat Graphic Design Festival in Switzerland. Inji came to us with this idea of bringing in a poster exhibition to Dubai, and we of course welcomed this idea of collaboration, and we were very excited actually because Dubai Design Week was interested in hosting us at that point, and we felt the need to conceive a graphic design exhibition because Design Week really focuses on this discipline. And this came to us as a perfect opportunity to kind of respond to that need. And in conjunction, we decided to do an exhibition that really focuses on Middle Eastern graphic designers in parallel, and represent them in an almost equal way to the Swiss designers. And of course, we were able to conceive a publication that, again, talks about poster culture in this part of the world. These are some pictures from the exhibition. And the nice thing is that this exhibition turned out to be a traveling exhibition, and we were able to take the Middle Eastern exhibit or part to Weltformat Festival in Switzerland, which was really cool. The latest edition of Design House was part of Fikra Design Biennial in 2018, and we were approached by Salim Al-Qasimi, the founder of Fikra, and Fikra Studio and Biennial to be a part of this first edition of the Biennial. And he was interested as a theme, he was interested in this idea of fictional ministry of graphic design, and Fikra was interested in taking over an abandoned building in the heart of Sharjah, in the Bank Street area. And without knowing anything about the project, we were very much, we wanted to be involved because we really advocate the need to repurpose existing building as opposed to demolishing them or making them disappear, especially when it comes to iconic historical buildings. Such as this one. This one was conceived in the 70s, and everybody remembers it. And it was really hard for us to realize that it's going to disappear really soon. So this idea of intervention might convince someone else that there's a way to repurpose these spaces and maintain their legacy. So we were assigned the Department of Flying Saucer in the Biennial, and it was up to us to interpret it however we want. And we were interested in this idea of bringing in flying saucers or collectives from other parts of the world who operate experimental whether physical, virtual, or makeshift spaces or collectives, and allow them to take over our department for a week each, and see how they activate their exhibitions, how they activate their programming with events, and learn from the experience, because at this point, we wanted to see how collectives like us operate. So we brought in public fiction from LA, and Sindusi from Korea, Foundland from Cairo and Amsterdam, and Turbo from Amman. And what was interesting about the experience is that we chose a very diverse a group of collectives to work with. Some have a clear curatorial agenda behind their work, while others are completely playful and spontaneous. And they both approaches works, and it was very interesting to see that very diverse approaches work equally well.
Yeah. So another line of investigation that we have been long invested in is typography oriented. One of our earliest observations in the city around us is that the English and the Arabic language have to often coexist. And in such context, it's always the Arabic that is compromised in terms of form. So we often see the Frankenstein Arabic that is just Latin letters chopped up and pasted together to create Arabic letters. And we felt like we wanted to investigate different ways of matchmaking. We're not type designers per se, so we kind of married our love for typography with our curiosity about materials and started creating these illustrations that are letter forms behaving in a specific way. And by imposing this quality, they started to coexist harmoniously without really compromising the letter forms, whether Latin or Arabic. And after this part of the process, we started questioning what would happen if those behaviors happened over time. What if we introduce this component of time? What happens if we investigate how materials change through the exposure of external factors and kind of seeing what would happen? And we ended up with this very basic tool with a number of behaviors, kinetic behaviors, that we just simply, that allows us to play around with this. And all the typefaces were created using manual processes, which is a really big part of what we're interested in when it comes to the design process. And then we took the letter forms into the physical realm and started to play around with the physical aspect and the three-dimensionality, and started sort of questioning what would happen when we start adding this tactile layer to our typographic experiments. And then we, like we always take it a step further, we started questioning the role of technology in not just in our practice, but also how it affects the final kind of work that we end up doing. Technology is often associated with precision, with intricacy, and we in this experiment we juxtaposed the precision of the technology with the fragility of a drawing tool such as a charcoal stick. So the machine that you see here is was initially a vinyl cutter that we have manipulated into hosting a charcoal stick instead of a cutter. And we basically designed the system of operation. So the computer kind of feeds text into the machine, and the machine spits out compositions that are made using the charcoal stick. And we ended up with this, like line of posters that were completely out of our control. None of these posters were replicable. We couldn't recreate any of it. And this is really, I would say, the spirit of this line of investigation specifically, because we generally try and reject the clinical, kind of very clean, polished aesthetics that often designers feel the need to adhere to. We like to create room for ourselves to just simply play around, allow ourselves mistakes, to fail comfortably, to reflect, and to also allow ourselves some sort of a journey of discovery and surprise. And this is really what happens when you stop trying to control every single component in your design process.
Since the theme of the talk is collaborations, we can't stress enough about the fact that none of the projects that we showcase so far are possible or were possible without the support of our community and collaborations with cultural institutions, whether big or small, list of designers who trusted us or worked with us or spent time working on our projects and also writers who helped us reflect on our projects and theorize about our projects as well. The last model we are going to talk about is independent work, and we like to take breaks from each other's every once in a while and diverge from the typical projects that we work on during our studio practice. For example, I will talk about salt. All of a sudden, I started becoming interested in salt as a construction material for objects. Mainly because salt formations happen naturally here in the UAE, and it's a fascinating phenomena that needs to be shed light on. But also because desalination plants here, when they produce tap water for us, they throw salt back in the water, and that's really dangerous for the environment. And so I wanted to prove that salt could be utilized as a construction material under certain conditions. And so I got into Tanween program by Tashkil, and I got a grant to investigate salt formation and salt crystallization as a process. And as an end result, I conceived a series of vases and tables that were part of Dubai Design Week for a few years now. Yeah.
Yeah. As for me, I became very interested in fiber, and I use fiber practices such as embroidery or weaving to mobilize conversations about impermanence, loss, and the institutionalization of sick bodies. 3 years ago, weaving became heavily a part of my practice, and I was interested in how language can take material form and how the accumulation of yarn can help me hide certain messages and reveal other messages, and help me really communicate the concepts I'm interested in.
And for the like closely knitted to our fascination with typography comes my fascination with language or the written word. So I'm very much interested in writing, and I tie this now to our practice collectively and individually. I really believe that to be a better designer, I need to write to articulate and clarify my motivations, the relevance of what I do to the context, and to position my inquiries in today's world. And I find that sometimes writing is a good tool to do so. Unfortunately, I do realize that when we write about theory, sometimes it's not very accessible. It's not very exciting. So my ambition with writing is to bring back the joy of reading, specifically for younger generations that I believe have to engage with theory. You can't avoid it for very long if you're really looking to develop further intellectually in the design field.
We wanted to tap a little bit into teaching or collaborations through teaching, but I think we ran out of time. So
should we like stop here, Ghalia, and open the floor for Q&A?
Just try to push it, like we go further.
All right, everyone, bear with us. Just the final
3 minutes.
Okay, final leg. So just wanted to kind of wrap this up by talking about our very humble experience in academia. And because our students mean so much to us, like here's like our hats off to them and we salute them. And we just wanted to say that we can tell our studio practice plays a very significant role in reinforcing this relationship between us and our students. We do feel that they see themselves through us, and that they also aspire to start their own studios, maybe aspire to start publishing and taking risks. And that's a responsibility we don't take lightly, and we want to satisfy their eagerness to learn about design practice specifically in the UAE and the region. So just to quickly go through some of our teaching objectives, we really want to present show diverse representation in the classroom and not just rely on the Western canon that was planted into our curricula. I mean, both as students and now as educators, we want to create cultural producers that feel empowered to look inward and closer to home. It's no secret that we kind of push our students to look at their close context and try to make work about, where they come from and what affects them. And also we try to instill curiosity about makers in the region, and not just show Western examples or only men as examples. And then really quickly, we're just going to skim through these projects. For us, it's important to nurture the students' haptic sensibilities and really make a point that visual communications does not have to be just on screen. You can use your hands. It can go outside the digital realm. I'm just going to skip. Just as the final goodbye, and just so we let you know what we're up to, we recently won a grant by Pro Helvetia, and for us it's going to help us realize a project that's been in the works for a few years now in our heads, and
it's going to allow us to bridge our studio practice with our teaching, basically. And we can't wait to share with you in the coming
year or two. Yeah. So we leave you with this, and maybe open it up for Q&A. Thank you for bearing with us. Peace.
Thank you, Hala, Hadeyeh, Riem. Was really nice to see all these projects. That actually, it's sometimes when you look back into like 10 years, it's actually there's a lot of like work has been done, and so can you like you presented like 3 kind of like approaches, and during those 10 years also the three of you actually finished your masters, like you talked about it at the beginning. So could you maybe like tell us more about your like kind of dynamic as a group, like the 3 of you, how you take decisions together, how you discuss, what are the challenges of being 3, but also the advantage of being 3, like because I think it's always like the questions, and of course we addressed this like before with our previous speakers, like how is it actually, and what are the disadvantages or like the difficulties, and how you also like it's a relation that it's also develop and grows through time, right? Like 10 years ago maybe you started different dynamic, and now you are more comfortable in the collaboration, so you know what your position is. Or so could you maybe talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, when we first started working together, it's really funny, but prior to initiating a studio, we were friends, but through the studio, we became best friends. And we somehow developed some telepathic skills and are able to read each other's thoughts, and somehow this really affects how we work together, because the minute we get a project, we know what everybody's going to do without talking about it, and that doesn't come naturally. It becomes inherent while we practice. And the other thing is we support each other a lot. So whenever one of us is interested in pursuing a project independently, the other 2 are aware and have a heightened sense of responsibility to take charge of the studio while the other person is away for masters or away doing an independent project. What else?
But also, like, we don't really have this hierarchy system. So even when we work with interns, or when we sometimes need to hire designers because we need extra hands, or because we are weak in certain areas and we think another designer would complement us or help us or teach us. So we kind of want this learning process to be like horizontal somehow. So there's never like we get asked this a lot actually, like who manages and who does this and who does that, and we just don't. It just works itself out. And I also feel like there's no, when egos aren't involved that way, it's easy to have this, you know, healthy environment, and to work together and to be telepathic. Like sometimes Hala completes my sentence, but before I even like, and you like before I say something, I'd just be like, and then Riem would say it, and I'd be like, you scare me sometimes. And yeah.
But ultimately, I think what's kind of really helping us work together is that over the years, we have developed the same kind of objective for the studio. So as a studio, we haven't started our interest in like doing research as much as we do now. And the studio direction generally has changed over the past 10 years. We didn't know that we would be interested in curation. We didn't even know this word existed. But then in retrospect, we realized certain patterns. We introspect a lot, we talk a lot, and critique a lot what we're doing. And not just the physical kind of output of our process, but also our thinking process and our motivations. And I think the fact that we have a collective end goal, or we kind of automatically or organically align it as we continue to work. It makes it easier for us to communicate and to trust one another, because we know that ultimately we're looking to do the same thing or achieve the same thing. And that I think just makes it easier, because if you at some point have a completely different ambition or aspiration from your partner, then there's going to be conflict. But I think we were lucky enough that we were able to align our aspirations and our ambitions at this point.
Okay, I would like to ask the students to ask their questions. Anyone with question?
We're very
you shed light on like working together when you know each other and you've been knowing each other for the past 10 years. But do you have any tips on collaborative work with people who you don't know that well, who wouldn't necessarily like have the same seamless seamless transition of, you know, like I know what you're thinking about, so I would take it in the same direction. Like something in the beginning where you didn't know each other.
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. And we do work with people that we don't know on a personal level, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, for various reasons. It could be we don't share the same ethos or values, or it could be we have different paces. But sometimes it also works beautifully, and it becomes like a I don't know,
a long-term
relationships. Like you would work with them in someone we've worked with like 7 years ago, we'd work with again, and it would kind of grow. But I think you were hoping for us to give you this really nice answer, you know, make it fit in nicely. But the truth is, sometimes it's not so graceful. And there's no way to avoid it. You just take that leap of faith and you hope that there's a push and pull, and one person pushes the other to make the work move forward.
I think it also gets easier with time and as you grow to know yourself a little bit more. Um, because it's easier to collaborate when you know who you are as a designer, you know what your values are, you know your design approach, and what you how you envision something to work. This way you can be more communicative, and you can also assert yourself when you have to, which is, I think, a very essential kind of skill to develop for collaborations. And it only, like, you can't read this in a book. They can't teach you how to do this in school. It purely comes from experiences. And this is, I think this is the advantage of introspection and stepping back after every process, every project, whether it's collaborative or not, to think about how it went, what you could have done better, how you could have maybe carried yourself in a more professional way or in a more effective way, etc. So I also think that the reflection part is very important, because this is where you realize the learning opportunities. So just kind of like grinding is not very helpful, because if you make a mistake, you'll always make the same mistake if you don't realize that maybe I could have done something better.
I think the only tip I would give you for a collaboration to work is flexibility. You have to be flexible enough to be able to work with others, and you have to keep on pushing and pulling, and allowing others to take the lead sometimes, and also to not have everything your way, basically.
We have few questions here on the chat, so I will read them for you. It's from Malak El Huwail. Hello, Malak. What do you do when you feel like you are stuck at a certain point during a project and can't find inspiration? So what do you do?
Obviously, cry about it at first. There has to be, okay? We'll just cry about it for a while.
We always believe that a project is only worth pursuing when it's challenging and it gives you existential crisis at some point of its existence or conception. That's number one. Number two is if you feel that way, you have to step back, give yourself a break from the project, and revisit it later with a fresh eye, or have conversations with common friends who are interested in your practice, and take yourself out of this hole.
But also, I think what we used to do is when we're stuck, we just stop and do stuff. That's the word. Just do anything. But working as you are feeling sad and awful and horrible, you're just making things on the side, and then you go back to it.
The other thing about inspiration, like I don't really like this word very much, because it almost makes it sound like it's a divine intervention sort of thing, like you sit there and then suddenly inspiration will come. It doesn't work this way. Or at least for us, like, we believe in a process of making. I think my tip here would be, stop trying to control everything so much and play around. Let serendipity take the lead. I think the fact that you're so invested and you're so close to the work and you're trying to control so much of it really leaves very little room for accidents to happen. And you really want to foster happy accidents and realize and recognize them when they happen. And this is where we often find inspiration. Like, we just do anything, but we look at it critically, and then this is when we realize some really important things happening.
Great. Sundus has also a question. Over 10 years, of course, there were times when it was so hard to keep the studio running and made you doubt yourselves and doubt that you can keep the studio up and running. How did you deal with those times and gotten back on your feet again?
I think I want to say we're lucky. Firstly, y'all are asking really like
Good questions.
also like existential questions.
I feel like I'm talking
Like
to my
I just,
psychiatrist.
yeah. Whew.
Design therapy.
I think honestly, what helped us is that we were based in a studio or a gallery space slash workspace called Tashkil. You can look it up. And it was based on a shared studio space kind of environment. So we were really fortunate that, especially in the first few years, a lot of our friends were operating from that space. So we always had that support. And more than anything, I think a sense of building a sense of community around yourself is the most valuable thing. And it's like a shoulder to cry on, really. It's what you always go back to. And I always try to tell my students this, that you will probably never all of you be together at the same time. So talk to each other, ask each other questions, rely on each other for feedback, help each other, be there for each other. And honestly, this is the answer that I can give with complete confidence. But also, we had each other. And I think there were times where one of us wasn't doing so well, and the other person would kind of take the lead. And this is ongoing all the time.
Okay, Hussein, Mustafa, if you can go back in time and change how you did something as your studio was developing, what would that be?
I'm sorry, it's also essential, but I'm a little bit curious.
Yeah. It's like, oof. You take a deep breath for this.
Take a finance course, an accounting course, something. Honestly, I think that's because we're so invested in the design part, we're not so good in the business aspects. Like we don't
business women.
Yeah, like we don't advise you to follow our business model.
Yeah.
But we were able to keep the studio up and running. But I'm sure that if you want to venture into making a successful business out of running a small studio, there are a lot of other non-design related aspects that you have to take into consideration. And that means that maybe you need to work with other people that don't speak the same language that you speak. So, if you're interested in creating a business, then really I would advise you to maybe tap a little bit into like the finance, accounting, even like marketing aspect of things, because it's really going to help you.
And I'd also encourage some sort of legal advice on how to establish this type of business. We didn't. We just jumped in the water and hoped for the best. And you should see us when we were running around governmental entities trying to understand what type of license works for a studio.
I was just going to say that. Oh my God, that was awful.
Design studio license didn't exist back then. And when we tried to talk to the governmental entity, the only option that would work for us is a photography studio, but it's not a photography studio. So they were like, okay, then you have to remove studio from your name.
We were like something in the license. It was something services. We were offering services, but like design. What's design? You could even say فنان تشكيلي, but no, you couldn't get a license for that. So it was really tricky. And I second this legal advice thing. We literally went into the economic, what was it called? Chamber of Economics. We walked in and they asked us, do you want an LLC license or this other license? And we were like, what LLC? It was really such a mess.
Yeah. But we learned.
And I think the hard way. And I think also the other honest answer is that I don't know anyone who Actually, maybe they exist, but for most people, it's really hard to depend solely on a design practice to sustain yourself. I think at the time, we were also living with our parents, so we didn't have to pay rent. There are a few factors there that really allowed us to the luxury of
experimenting with our career,
experimenting with what a design studio is. Of course, we got the comments from parents like, and extended family, like, what are you doing? Do you have a job? Like for the whole 10 years, it's like, they don't have a job. And we're like, yeah, sure, we don't have a job. So it's success to other people looks different. And sometimes it's equated with how much money you're making. And for us, that wasn't the most important thing. We wanted to, do more of design house and take more cultural projects. So we did everything to make it work. I'm going off tangents and not replying to your. Oh wait. Oh sorry, Hussein. I'm gonna go to the other question.
Yeah, it's okay. Thanks.
Okay, so Myrna, she's asking, you feature rejected design and projects that you have worked on your website, I think. Yeah. Do you believe it's important to showcase these design and to show the thought process and effort invested in those? So what's your stand on this, the rejected project, the rejected proposals?
Yeah, we basically wanted to pay respect or tribute to the projects that never saw the light. And we also wanted to torture ourselves by publishing the work so that we don't use it for other projects, basically.
And also this taboo around, if something is rejected, khalas, it has to grow dust and spider webs in a folder or a box of tracing paper. We just wanted to just get over that and be like, you know what? They said no, but we want to really honor our labor, and this is the work. This is work we did, so it deserves to be seen.
Yeah. And we learned through practice that rejection doesn't mean that the quality of work is bad. Other factors contribute to why the project was rejected. It could be who you are or who you come from, or it could be budget, or it could be time frame. There are a lot of other factors that contribute. And
yeah, we like to celebrate our failures. I think they deserve as much celebration as your successful attempts. You learn as much from your mistakes as you do from the things that get published, that are out there, that get the exposure.
So, second question, how do you deal with censorship, either imposed by restrictions of the UAE, but also other places? How do you deal with that? What is also the smart way to deal with those things? This is what
that's the answer. It's like how you say something, and you kind of depend on, if you know, kind of language.
But also we're designers, and the designers are meant to respond to the context with their designs. And if this censorship or limitation is part of the context, then we have to respond to it and find a way to speak up our mind without
being so explicit,
or getting in trouble, or
you find a way to be, I think, suggestive.
Yeah, and exactly. I think 100%. I think that censorship forces you to find more subversive way of messaging. That is in many cases much stronger than things that are
in your
face. And I think it's if you choose to look at it as a challenge, you become a much stronger designer because of censorship. And I think for the most part, we choose to look at it as a challenge. We have, in some projects, we have delved into topics that are considered taboo, but we have found ways to communicate what we want and communicate what we really think about these topics without being too explicit. And it's just, it forces you to be less, take things at face value, and you become more suggestive, smarter in the way that you're putting things in that specific context. So you navigate around it. And I don't think that it's for our design practice, it shouldn't hold you back.
But also, like, you're talking to a certain group of people. So it becomes really targeted to someone who will understand you, even if you're being subtle and suggestive.
As a team of 3 female designers, does that affect or change anything in your work field, surrounding, environment, gender, and design? I think this is a very important topic that we don't really talk about it regionally, but I think it's somehow part of the reality. So do you face any, or do you believe that there is gender issues when it comes to the design environment?
I think there are gender issues regardless of the discipline. Whether you're a designer, doctor, or engineer, you will have the same obstacles in your way as a female. But what I've noticed about our context is that most of cultural institutions or design initiatives are actually led by females, which is not expected from this part of the world for some reason. Yeah, I mean.
But you know what's also interesting is that actually, I think that male designers have a much harder time being designers or artists because the society kind of has an imposed image on male figure and what it means to be male, and that you have to be stable financially for your future, blah, blah. So most of our student body in AUS, for instance, they're mostly female, and most male students tend to go into architecture, engineering, things that are quote unquote more stable. And in that sense, this imbalance is a lot more obvious when it comes to the design practice. It's okay for a female to become an artist because you don't have to bear this responsibility. So in a way, I think that being female hasn't really affected us that much, or not as explicitly as it does male designers, actually.
Ahmed is asking, what is your top priority in updating design education? Any successful attempts since you started teaching?
I mean, we're excited about the new book that's out. Yeah,
Exactly.
Today we're trying to get our hands on it.
Going to give a promotion at the end. So
yeah, we want to be able to.
We've been talking about it in faculty meetings for the last 3 semesters to introduce it as part of the design history classes. So that's one. And the other thing is, Riem and I are starting an Arabic typography experimental course next semester. We're going to be operating 2 sections because there is a lot of interest, and we're really glad there is a lot of interest just to prove to the school in specific and the university in general that we need more of this. What else?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, generally we want to shift the focus to be less on the injected kind of Western notions in the Western canon in our design education, and to introduce more representations from the Arab Manasa region, so that the students see themselves in their education. I mean, we're the products of the same institution. We're all graduates from American University of Sharjah, and we see this in ourselves as a weakness. We graduated with really very minimal knowledge of the Arabic language as designers, as type. And it's still taking us a long time to find space and time for us to learn the things that we would have loved to get a chance to learn when we were students, and becomes much harder when you're professional, because where do you find the time to do all of this? So this is what we're trying to do for our students now, kind of introduce these things that we wish we had as students and that we realize that they need right now to be able to operate in the professional kind of design field.
We also want to do more collaborations with regional universities.
Wink, wink.
We did like in February, the 1st. We should do more. Yes. Carry projects on airplanes in our personal suitcase. This is yes. Okay, so let's go to the next question. How do you time manage teaching, social life, personal life, and Mobius?
We don't manage.
We don't manage. We're awful. We don't know how to reach life balance. I mean, something has to suffer. We suffer all the time.
What is suffering now? And
70% of our time is dedicated to teaching because it's really the end of the semester and it's very hectic. So the rest is suffering, whether personal, whether studio work, and frankly, it makes us feel really guilty. But we haven't figured out what's the right formula to establish balance. I don't know if it ever exists. Or it's a myth.
I don't know, and like we're always, I think, borderline. We have this phobia of not being high achievers. I think so. There's always this voice in our head that, you know, the work cannot suffer, but like something suffers. So we don't know how to give advice about balance, but you should have a balanced life. Make time for yourself, you know, take care of yourself, rest. We encourage this. Please find a way and tell us how to do it.
Okay, how do you see studio's role in community? How do you view the studio setting versus corporate one in various design-related disciplines?
Well, to begin with, we're really keen on establishing a studio to prove a point, basically for ourselves first, but for our friends and colleagues that it's possible to operate a design studio, and this city, and in that sense, for us, establishing a studio was some sort of a social act, right? It's definitely well, the difference between corporate and studio. First of all, you're not you know, stuck in a cubicle, and you have the freedom to explore and make a mess. And we as a trio, we can't work without making a mess. Especially me, like my side of the studio is the messiest. Yeah. But there are advantages to being in a corporate setting. It's a 8 to 5 type of job. You have a steady income, and you establish maybe a network with really high brands or high-end brands. So it depends on what you want. I don't think one is better than the other. It depends on what makes you happy.
Yeah. I think you're true. I think what you're saying is true, but also, I mean, like studios actually, but by mess, I assume you mean more experimental, like you have the luxury of experimenting, as per se. Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, and actually, I think that studio have important role of informing the corporates and the, especially in maybe other more technical design disciplines, like for example the architecture, the one which I mostly work with. So I think because of the luxury of experimentation and time and working on like really tight budget and not having a good income as a priority in most of the time. So I think that studios are actually informing the corporate, and I think like this notion has to be more well known and established now, because actually it happened in a subtle way, and I think maybe it's time that this is more obvious for the corporate themselves. Like it's very good for them to have these like small kind of circles of studio and independent designers, because in a way or another it informs them of the latest materials, latest technology, more experimentation, and things they actually don't have the time or the luxury of experimenting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi. Yeah. Hi, and thank you for the talk. I really have enjoyed.
You're welcome. Thank you for attending.
We still have,
so it's nice to see her here.
Thanks, you too.
we still have two questions from Huda and Dina. So I will ask them both, and then you can maybe answer them together. You definitely have had tough times. Did you ever want to stop and give up? Did you ever regret starting the studio? And Dina's question: what is something you wish you knew, wish someone told you starting up?
I mean, yes, we always have our doubts about why we're doing this to ourselves, or is it worth it?
Yeah, I don't think there was a day we didn't ask that.
Mhm.
Like, is it really worth it, this torture? Because you sometimes, most times, we put so much work and effort into something that we feel is undervalued or not appreciated, but somehow things come back full circle. So there are many instances where we worked so hard and there's no instant gratification, but like 3 years down the line, we get this email that, hello, I read about this that you did, and this makes all the difference. I don't think we ever regretted starting the studio. I will say though, I would have given up a long time ago if it weren't for these two. Like I don't think I would have had this conviction that design is just so amazing and it's enough in its own right for me to go through this. I think that would be me lying. For me, design is very much tied into I think my relationship with these two, the community. It's not separate for me. Otherwise, I mean, I don't know how I would answer if it's worth it. So I guess you need to find what that X factor is for you that makes it worth it. What's something you wish you knew? I wish someone told like 20-year-old us, like, you're gonna be fine in 5 years. It's okay. You can take like Saturday off. You can sleep. I wish someone told us that.
Yeah, boundaries.
A little bit. We don't know. We have more boundaries now. A little bit. Like I tell my students, weekends are off limits.
Good.
Yeah. Great. Any more questions? No. Thank you so much. That was really great. Do you have any notes? Anything you want to add, or?
Just thank you guys so much for your
staying.
patience and for staying, and good luck with your finals. I'm not sure if you're also finishing your semester, but best of luck with your final projects.
Yeah. So everybody is heading toward the finals, and I saw also some thesis students working hard on their final week. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Power to all of you.
Yes, and so before we say goodbye to you, as I promised, I want to do this.
It's a promo.
No, Ghalia, you're lagging. Come back with the promo. Ta'ali.
Short promotion.
Oh, she's back.
Great glitch.
Let's buy the book. We endorse.
No, more copies for us.
No, but Ghalia, listen. We need a few copies.
Yes, we are going to work on it. So just let me introduce it for students who doesn't know. Like, this is a history of Arab graphic design book by our colleagues Bahia Shihab and Hatem Nawar. It's a project they were working on for 3.5 years. Finally, the book is out, and it's a really great assembly of the most let's say the first group, because tonight they were talking about like apologizing that maybe they missed someone or they didn't really have enough time and pages to write about everybody. Yes, so it is like the first kind of assembly of the pioneer Arab graphic designers in the Arab world. So it's a great book. It's a great addition to our curriculum, and we need to do more of these projects. So yeah, you can order the book through AUC Press. If it's not possible, we can maybe help you get a copy. I don't know. Coming to when the world is COVID free and we can travel, we can take it with us in our suitcases. But until now, it needs to happen through AUC Press. Thank you a lot. It was a pleasure having you as our last guest. More of these talks, like we hope to host you again in the future with more projects and hopefully also with students work. Who knows, maybe we start a student conference.
Yes.
So thank you a lot. Thank you everybody who attended tonight, and I just want to say that the talks will be online soon, and we will announce this on our social media, and you can watch it again. They will be on YouTube again, but not tonight, so after some editing. Great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ghalia, Ahmed.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.